Hi, and welcome to the next video of our seminar History of English 2 from Synthetic to Analytic. In this video, we are going to discuss our last episode on Middle English. And today, we are going to have a look at what happened to Old English pronouns, and more specifically, on how to be impolite or polite in Middle English. And as always, I'm also going to tell you what we're going to do next time. Right, so let's begin with the changes that happened to Old English pronouns. As you might remember from our reading of the colloquies, Old English had a very complex system of pronouns. They had the normal singular and plural pronouns, right? And every pronoun had a genitive, dative, and an accusative form. There are actually also some instrumental forms. But then there was also a dual, special category used only to refer to two people, two persons, or two things, whereas plural was used when there were more than two people or things. But what we are going to have a look at now in more detail is what happened to the second person singular and plural pronouns. Right. So in Old English, we had this simple distinction between the singular pronoun thu and the plural pronoun ye. And it's really pretty straightforward. If you have one thing or one person, you use the singular pronoun thu. If you have more than one person, you use ye. But in Middle English, there was actually something else that happened. You also could use, to address a single person, the pronoun thu, and for more than one person, the pronoun ye. But what you also could do is to use the plural pronoun if you were talking only to one person, right? So you have in Old English a distinction that is based on grammar or on the extra-linguistic situation. If you have one person, then this pronoun. If you have more than one person, then this other one. But in Middle English, under the influence of the chivalric traditions and under the influence of French culture and French language, people started to use the plural pronoun when addressing one single person in order to express their respect and politeness. If you can do that, you can actually also do the opposite, and by using the wrong pronoun, you can actually also express impoliteness. Right. And this is what we are going to have a look at right now. How to be impolite in Middle English. We're going to do that based on another part of Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales, in particular the Miller's Prologue, so the beginning of the Miller's story, the Miller's Tale, and we are going to focus on what pronouns the different persons in this text use and why. Right, so this is the text. I'm not going to read out the whole text. You will find the text as a handout on Blackboard later on. So if you want, read the whole story. But for now, just look at line number 5. Now telleth ye, Sir Monk, if that ye con. So there is the host that encourages the monk to tell his story. And you can see that he uses the pronoun ye, which is actually the plural pronoun, but in this case, in this context, it is used to address only the monk, so only one single person. And additionally to that, you can also see that the monk is also addressed by Sir, So there are other terms of respect or polite address in that sentence. So you see that here the host speaking to the monk is actually using the polite singular use of the originally only plural pronoun ye. Right, so let's turn to another example where here the host speaks with a drunk miller, right? So the story behind this is that the host actually wants the monk to tell his tale, but then a drunk miller comes along and he wants to tell his own tale and not wait after the monk. So here the host speaks to the drunk miller in a completely different way, right? So have a look at the line number 22. Thou art a fool, thy wit is overcome, right? So the host talks to this drunk miller and he uses the original, actually the normal singular pronoun thou, or also the possessive form thy. And by doing that, in contrast to having used the ye pronoun, the polite pronoun with the monk, here you can see that he is expressing his impoliteness or the lack of respect towards this person by using the singular pronoun. He also uses the word fool, so it is clear that their relation is not, or at least the relation of the host to the miller is not a very positive one. Now, if we look a bit further down, in line 27, we'll see this. Weeted the Isle of Southwark, are you pray? Here, the miller actually responds to the host, and what he does is that he uses the singular you, or singular ye in this case. So even though the miller was actually, the miller was addressed by the host with the singular impolite pronoun, the miller uses actually the polite form when addressing the host. So he still sees that he is in a higher position, higher in the societal hierarchy, and that's why he uses this you. Right, and now if we turn to the very last line, we have here the reeve, another figure from the Canterbury Tales, addressing the miller, and again he uses the impolite singular thou, right? Thou mayst enough of other things sein. So you may here see that again, if the reeve has no respect for the miller, he uses the impolite singular pronoun. Right. So to sum up here, we have here the three persons: the host, the reeve, and the monk. The monk is obviously socially superior. He's also being addressed as Sir Monk. Miller is then socially inferior to the other persons. For one, he's a miller, right? And the second thing is that he's drunk and he actually wants to tell his tale instead of the monk. Right, and then you can actually see that the host, when addressing the monk who is socially superior, uses the polite singular ye, right? Whereas the host addressing the miller uses the impolite singular thou. So you see that in contrast to Old English, where the number was important, whether you are speaking to one person or more than one person, you here see one person being addressed, and in one case you have the polite form, and in the other, on the other hand, you have the impolite form, and it's all actually steered pragmatically. So if you want to be polite or impolite, you have to choose between either the singular you or the singular thou. Again, right. So what you actually see in terms of pronouns in the development of the English language, we see this system in Middle English where you have thou for the singular and ye for the plural. And what actually happens is that ye starts to become the polite pronoun, right? So sometimes these two versions are also referred to as the T form, based on the French tu, and the V option, vous, for the polite form. And this is also something that you can see in other languages as well, French, for instance, but also Spanish, Czech. In German, the case is a bit more complicated because then it's not the second person plural. It was actually the case earlier in English, but that you in German that you actually use the pronoun ihr. But nowadays, what you do is you use the third person plural, right, in German. Okay. So what you do here is you use the pronoun to signal the social position of your interlocutor. So depending on who you are talking to and what your relationship with that person is, you choose the right pronoun for the situation, and not and what is not decisive is whether you're talking to one person or more than one person. Right. What later on happens to this Middle English system is that you actually, if you look at the table here, you is actually the dative or the object form of ye, but for reasons that I'm not going to discuss here, but for certain reasons, you gets actually generalized so that it not only is used for in its object form, but also in the nominative. So nowadays, you is used as the nominative form if you want to address someone, right? And then this you actually becomes also generalized for all singular contexts. So not only if you want to be polite, but it is actually the normal pronoun. In present-day English, you still have the th pronoun for the second person singular, thou, and the possessive pronoun thy, but it is only used in very limited, archaic, or biblical context. So it's not something that you would normally use in a conversation. Right. So to sum up, we have seen that there are basically two developments in Middle English in terms of pronouns. There is this one generalization of plural pronoun ye that becomes used also in the singular, right? And this is actually something that we see nowadays happening in the present-day English pronominal system when people use they, which is originally a plural pronoun, and people start to use that to refer to one person only, right? So I'm not sure, there is a friend coming, but I'm not sure whether they will bring their own food or not. Right. Another thing is that not only is this a simple generalization that you use the plural pronoun in singular context as well, what you also do is the social indexicality of the pronoun. So by using the pronoun, you are also signaling that your interlocutor has a higher status or is equal to you. whereas you can signal the opposite by using the other pronoun, who. Okay, but this is also not the whole thing. You can actually see that the system of when to use which pronoun in Middle English is really complex, and I'm not going to go into the details of it right now, but you can have a look at that later on. Right. Right. But if you compare the present-day English system, where you have you basically for the singular and plural, and also for the nominative and dative or object form, you see that the Middle English pronominal system in the second person is a bit more complex than the system we have nowadays in English, right? And it's in Middle English, or in the history of English, we not only have a generalization of the pronoun, but we also have a generalization of the verbal form, right? So earlier on, you had thou art, right, with the T ending for the singular, whereas you had we are for the plural. But if you generalize the pronoun to be used in the singular as well, so the pronoun takes the verbal form with it, so that you have you are and we are, you have the same verbal form being used also in the singular. Right. So there are actually, if we compare the pronominal system of present-day English and Middle English, we actually see three functional shifts. For the one, so first, we go actually from the dative accusative, so-called object form, to the nominative form. So you was originally not the nominative form, and it becomes the nominative form. Then we go from plural only, you, to you being used only, to you being used for singular, in singular context as well. And then we also go from being polite earlier on to being neutral, right? So nowadays, you, even though it was the polite form in Middle English, nowadays it's the normal thing to do, right? So you're not being polite in English nowadays by using you. Okay, and this old discussion of Middle English pronouns can actually help us to sort of, if we linguistically analyze the contemporary debate about the use of singular they, right? So it's not something that the progressive classes sort of want to introduce now. It's not something modern. This actually has happened already in English. It happened during the Middle English period with you, right? So, right. Right, so that was that. We're going to have a look at the details of how Middle English used the pronouns in our online session. And next time, we are actually going to wrap up our block on Middle English and start talking about early modern English. And we are going to do that by looking at a proposal for a reformed spelling by John Hart, and we are also going to discuss the Great Vowel Shift. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye.